triple header this weekend for the Mio on MMA podcast. We got Bellator 300, which a lot of people think might be their last show, at least under the Bellator brand. Of course, the brand is, they're trying to sell it. They're trying to go away and cash out. And most likely PFL is your eventual destination for most of these fighters, at least at a purchase, whether that is bringing everyone across into PFL to have like a more deep, more patented, more potent tournament roster, or whether it is keeping it as its own separate brand with the PFL, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but there it is. We've also got one fight night, Lee versus Freimanov tomorrow, October 6th, 8 p.m. Eastern, on, I think it's on Prime. It might not be on Prime, which is a very, very short one. There's only 7 fights booked on it, according to Tapology. Let me refresh the page and see if anything got added. Okay, something did get added. One more. Mikey Musumeci versus Shinya Aoki. That's a big deal. Love it. Love it. Want it. Want to marry it. Thon Lee versus Fremenov is a good fight as well. Daniel Williams is fighting John DeBella in a kickboxing match. I'm not super familiar with John DeBella. I've said this before. I'm not a super big fan of kickboxing. Not necessarily because I'm not a big fan of like the sport, of the way of fighting, of any of those things. It's more that, realistically speaking, I look at kickboxing, I look at MMA, I look at boxing. I tend to just watch MMA. Like, I like everything. I like the grappling. I like the striking. MMA is my passion when it comes to combat sports. And as a result, like, everything else kind of gets pushed to the rear view just a little bit. So, like, I do watch some kickboxing, but I'm just not super familiar with it. We got Senchai versus John Woodanut. Or Nadanut. Nata what? Probably not actually how you say his name, but again, not a kickboxing guy. And that name does tickle me a little bit. Timothy Nasukin's also on the card, but he's against a guy in Li Pijang who is not especially good, is what it comes down to. So we'll give quick thoughts on those two cards. On the Bellator card, you've got Usman Nurmagomedov versus Brett Primus. You have to take Usman Nurmagomedov. Primus is a good fighter, like a tricky fighter, and a guy who pulls out some surprising things, but like at the end of the day, is predominantly a grappler in nature, and that's not how you beat Nurmagomedov. Any of the Nurmagomedovs, really, except for basically Saeed, because they're extremely good Dagestani wrestler sambo combination guys. And I'm gonna adjust the mic here just a little bit. Hopefully that improves the sound a little bit. I was seeing a little bit of low levels. Anyways. So yeah, you got to go with Usman Nurmagomedov. That's the safe pick. He's, I think, a massive favorite. Let's pull up the best fight odds for that card. Best fight odds. Bellator. There you are. I should have written these down. My apologies. Do we not have an Usman Nurmagomedov line? It looks like all the title fights are on something. Oh, there it is. Okay, there it is. It's a different section. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, minus 1,300 to minus 1,200, or to plus 1,200. Whew. Like, minus 1,300 is the lowest you can get Nurmagomedov at. That's a little bit it's a little insane. Little bit insane. But yeah, he's the obvious pick here. Chris Cyborg against Kat Zingano. Again, don't really see how Kat Zingano gets the win there. Zingano is someone who, at her best, tends to out-force people, like just a force of nature, and you don't really do that to Cyborg. I know a lot of people were like really super excited for Zingano versus Cyborg. Like, that's been a fight that the women's MMA fandom has been calling for a long time. It's just one that I don't see as being very competitive. And again, the betting lines are exceptionally wide, minus 550 to minus 650 on Cyborg, and Zingano you can get for anywhere from plus 370 to plus 470. So yeah, again, not amazing. And then you got Liz Carmouche versus Ilima-Lei McFarland. I would like to be more excited for that fight than I am. The problem that fight has, essentially, in my opinion, is that both girls kind of want to do the same thing. They both want to be physically dominant to apply essentially a wrestling and top control control grappling game at the end of the day. And as soon as one of them does that to the other, the fight will be pretty much be not over, but like a little bit anticlimactic from that point forward. I'm going to go with Liz Carmouche. She has better secondary skills. If she does have to use them, she's a more comfortable striker and so on. She's a fighter who has been historically pretty well-rounded, pretty physical, and incredibly calm in the chaos and the challenges of fight. And I've never been a big believer in Ilima-Lei McFarland. Like, she's obviously not bad. She's a good athlete. She's a good wrestler, like I said. She's a good top game player. She has all of those things going for her. It's just that at the same time, I've never been impressed. I've never seen an X factor to her game. Really. Like, it's kind of the one where like you put her in there with someone that she can just kind of bully, and she does that. But you put her in there with someone who can provide a little bit of resistance, a Justine Keach, for example, and she loses. A Juliana Velasquez, she loses. So I'm going to go with Ilima-Lei McFarland, but like if there is a champion who's going to lose their belt on this card, Liz Carmouche is the best bet, and the betting lines also are like very clear on that. So this is not a hot take or anything. Minus 265 to minus 295 on Carmouche, and then for McFarland, you can get her at fairly appealing odds. To be honest, if you think she's going to win, plus 205 to plus 220, it's not bad. That's the bettable line right there. The Zingano and Primus just don't really have a chance. And then the undercard really doesn't have much, to be honest. There's a lot of prospects on this card. A lot of prospects. There's also Sarah McMahon versus Leah McCourt. I'm going with Sarah McMahon in that fight. Don't get me wrong, McMahon could totally lose to Leah McCourt. McMahon can lose to anybody. Like, if you really look at the 6 losses of Sarah McMahon, they're almost all fights that she should probably have won. Like, she should have beaten Juliana Pena, and she didn't. She should have beaten Marion Renault, and she didn't. She probably could have beaten Ketlin Vieira, and she didn't. Like, Amanda Nunes, Ronda Rousey, cool, whatever. That's fine. That's dope. That's fine. But like every other fight, it's just her falling apart as the fight goes on. Her self-destructing over time and just not liking the fight game. It's kind of weird that she's still in it. It's kind of sad whenever like this. I get sad whenever I see someone who realistically does not appear to be enjoying the fights. Like this is we've had this a lot with like Jamie Pickett, for example, in the UFC, where it's like, why are you doing this? There's not enough money to make you have basically what is confrontational therapy every time you step in the cage. And that feels what Sarah McMahon is doing. So she could always lose, but like realistically, she has the physical game, the wrestling game, obviously, to overpower McCourt, and she should be able to win. Henry Corrales versus Kai Kamaka III. I'm looking forward to that, and I'm picking Corrales. I like Kai Kamaka's game. Like, he's an exciting fighter to watch. Love watching him fight. Real talk. But at the same time, I don't actually think he's all that good. Like, even when he was in the UFC, and people were hyping him up after his win over Tony Kelly, like, that was a good fight. That's a fight I go back and like watch, not for studying purposes, but just because it's a fun fight. And there are a bunch of those on Kai Kamaka's record. It's just that at the same time, there's not really a finishing aspect to him. There's not really a great control aspect to him. He is pretty much reliant on just kind of outworking you repetitively as fights go on. And I don't think you can do that to Henry Corrales. So I'm going with Henry Corrales. Slim Trebelsi is also on the card. I think I got his name right there. Not good at Tunisian names, I'll freely say that. But him and Davion Franklin, that's a pretty cool fight, as is Yagshimuradov versus Rosansky, which I'm going with Yagshimuradov to win. I really like Yagshimuradov. Like his style is not advisable, and it's clunky, and but at the same time, it's artistically beautiful, and sometimes incredibly effective. So I have him winning. I just don't think Rosansky's all that good. He's your classic Polish journeyman fighter. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Poland's got a very developed MMA scene. But it does mean that when he fights people that you instinctively know, you look at the name and you're like, I know that person, the Carl Moores, the Jack Hermansons of the world, he does lose. And he does lose pretty comprehensively. And, he's got some good wins. World Flurry is not a bad fighter, obviously. He's in PFL now. Lee Chadwick is a great veteran. Michael Pasternak is a great veteran. There are people on this list that he has beaten that are good fighters, but they're not of that level. They're not guys I ever had earmarked for Bellator like main cards or the UFC or even like making a lot of noise in PFL. And Yakhshamurdov is, I don't know if he's a guy I really have written down as a guy who makes a lot of noise, because he's a 5'11", 205er, and there's always just some significant limitations there. The 72-inch reach, fighting out of like a team that doesn't produce anybody else out of Turkmenistan. There's obvious problems here, but like he is a guy who has beaten Julius Anglickas, who's a good fighter, Rafael Carvalho, who's a good fighter, who had a good fight with Carl Albrechtsen, who's a good fighter, had a reasonably competitive fight with Corey Anderson until getting stopped, who is a very, very, very good fighter, who's beaten Joachim Christensen, who's a good fighter. He's a guy who feels like he's got, I guess, kind of in that similar mold, but like a step higher in that mold of journeyman guy who, when you beat them, it means something, and when you lose them, it also means something, and it's not so good. Then over in one, like I said, Thon Lee versus Frymanov. I'm looking forward to that. I'm picking Frymanov. I don't like Thon Lee's style. I never have. I never have liked Thon Lee's style. I'm actually curious, what are the betting odds on this fight? There's only one. FanDuel's the only one that's got one, and it does have Frymanov as the favored. There doesn't seem to be a lot of betting lines on one here, which is a shame. Yeah, not much. Yeah, I've got Frymanov winning that one. I'm hoping Mike Musumeci beats Shinya Aoki. Aoki's a bit of a dick. and also has like some limitations as a grappler that hopefully Musumeci can take advantage of. I'm taking Senchai. I'm taking Williams. I am taking Mansour Malachiev to win his flyweight fight with Joshua Pasio. Like I said, I'm taking Timothy Nasukin to win. I'm taking Saputra to win against Young Hu. And I do not know the middleweight fight they got on here between Taiho Jin and Hiroki Tetsuka enough to really make a pick there. They both are like journeyman Asian fighters, and it'll probably be fun. Like they both have fun styles from what I can see, but I don't really have an idea of who's going to win. And it's a shame that we don't get Jonathan Haggerty on this card. So yeah, that's the one card. I guess I will go a little bit onto one here for a second here, because someone did ask me like why I don't talk about one enough. Because like it's always been said, you don't like the UFC from a business model standpoint. Why do you cover the UFC and not anything else? Why don't you give the love to the rivals? And the problem is that, I mean, Bellator is being sold. I think PFL as a constructed idea is always going to struggle to compete with the UFC, because I don't, as entertaining and idealistic as the season format is, I think it always falls short because it denies them the ability to control some things, and they try to control it. And then you have one. And one has theoretically the money behind it to compete, and also has the novel idea of like 4-ounce Muay Thai, making the kickboxing and the grappling also part of the cards, having it be like this kind of buffet style of card, as opposed to going in and ordering a good MMA card. You're like getting everything, so to speak, in the restaurant. And I like that idea a lot. I like it a lot. But the problem is that I also think one is run in a way that is run by people who are just shite. Like when it comes down to it, that's just all there is to it. Like you have Chatri Sidiotong out there talking about how two of his fighters really should retire and like pooping on it. And the fight was fine. We talk about the Amir Khan and Edward Folayoung fight. It was fine. It wasn't good. I'm not telling you to go out of your way to go watch it, but it's a perfectly fine fight. I don't get it. I don't understand. Like, he's like, it's low output, it's boring, it's whatever. It's like, I get annoyed when Dana White runs over his own fighters, but at least like I can figure out a reason why Dana White is running over some of his fighters. Like, there's a business reason. It's still stupid. It's still bad as a promoter to be doing that. But like, Sit Yatong here is running over two guys who have value to him only. No one else is really trying to crack the Filipino and Singapore MMA market here, my guy. You could just let them go if you don't want to employ them. Just let them go and let them loose of their incredibly limiting, like borderline slave labor contracts with one. I guess this is the problem, is that everything I dislike about the UFC is applicable to one, is applicable to the PFL at times. Bellator was run in a way that I generally liked. I'm not saying I liked everything about it. I'm not saying that there wasn't bad decisions there. But realistically speaking, there was a lot of things I did like. I've always liked Scott Coker as a promoter. And the problem is that, well, it didn't work in Strikeforce, and now it's not worked in Bellator. So that's kind of the problem, is that repping the rivalry that I actually want to see succeed, I've now seen it fail too many times. And that's kind of it. It's also just a matter of time. Like, I would love to break down every single MMA. I would love to break down LFA cards. I would love to break down Cage Force. Is it CFFC? Fury. Cage Fury FC. Fury FC. I would love to get down to like Bayou FC down in Louisiana. I would love to do all of these things. But there is a finite amount of time to do things properly. So that's why it's a lot of the UFC and not a lot of else. So let's talk about the UFC card. Let me just quickly check if, while I was asleep, that there were any changes. Doesn't look like there were. That's good. A couple fights have fallen apart off this card. I miss Chris Gutierrez versus Montel Jackson. That was a cool fight. I was looking forward to it. I don't think they kept Gutierrez on the card. Yeah, I don't see him. And then I was not really looking forward to Daniel Pineda versus Kushin Ashkabov, but like, it was cool because Ashkabov has a lot of hype because he's got a very paper-heavy record. He's the guy that came into the UFC, fought Jamal Emmers, lost, and now has some criminal issues to probably deal with. And it was going to be a good win for Daniel Pineda. So I guess in that regard, I'm disappointed. And Montana De La Rosa, Stephanie Edgar fell apart. It's been replaced by, in my opinion, a better fight between Montana De La Rosa and JJ Aldridge. So I'm actually kind of happy with that one, as long as Edgar is not like seriously injured. I haven't heard any details of her injury or whatever is forcing her to withdraw. So as long as it's kind of a relaxed, injury, that's, in general, an improvement. So we got an 11 fight card. Main event, Grant Dawson and Bobby Green. Man, what to say about this fight? I don't want to pick Dawson, and yet I feel like I have to. Grant Dawson is a guy who has been winning a lot of fights lately. He's been moving up in the world. I wanted to see him fight Mateusz Gamrot, actually really, really badly. He's pretty one-dimensional. His striking is pretty bad. You watch him strike. When he steps back, he's way out of position. He's not ready to absorb a strike. He's not ready to defend against anything realistically. He's not particularly fast. Doesn't seem to react to punches particularly well. He gets rocked in almost every single fight he has. It's always gets like a draw with Ricky Glenn. But my God, is he apparently a really effective wrestler, because it is not pretty. It's not pretty to watch. It's not what you would call technically sound, but it is him going out there and out wrestling some guys who are very, very good at it, like Marco Madsen. That's an Olympic wrestler right there. Like Damir Ismagulov is a very good wrestler right there as well. And he went out there, he made it look easy. Made it look easy, essentially. He did to Ismagulov what Arman Saryukin did. That's amazing. That's incredible. It's not usually how you beat Bobby Green, though. Bobby Green's a guy who is historically pretty hard to out-wrestle. Don't get me wrong, it can be done. Islam Makhachev did it. It can be done, but it's very, very hard. Green is very, very hard to out-grapple, very, very hard to out-wrestle, very, very hard to submit. And that's another concern because Dawson has historically had some cardio issues, although mostly at 45, not 55. And Green is the far better striker, obviously. He's a very good striker, very slick, smooth boxer. It's what he does. But at the end of the day, I do think I had to go with Dawson to get the job done. Green's problem is he's always in like super close fights. Very, very seldom does he just kind of like take an opening, put his foot to the gas, and just absolutely destroy things. He doesn't do that. He should do that. I want to see him do that. But it's not usually how it goes. So there you go. Going with Grant Dawson to win a decision because I don't see him finishing him. But at the same time, like I have a hard time seeing him like pull this off for 5 rounds. Like legitimately, I see this as a big problem for him. But I do have to go for him against Bobby Green. I think that's the idea here. Bobby King Green or King Green, whatever he's calling himself now. I'll be cheering for him because it's nothing against Grant Dawson. I've not seen anything that indicate that like he's like a massively problematic human being or anything. Nothing like that. It's just I don't particularly enjoy his fights. And I'm not. Oh, there it is. I was going to say, they don't have it with the rest of the fights again. God damn it, Best Fight Odds. Get on your game. So betting odds wise, Grant Dawson is anywhere from a -400 to -450 favorite. And Bobby Green is too big of an underdog here. +300 at the low end to +340. That's a lot. That's a lot, guys. I'd be tempted to bet on Bobby Green. I will say once again, the standard betting, rules here. Don't do it. Don't do it unless you have the cash to lose. This is MMA. Betting on this is not a safe proposition. Joe Pyfer versus Razak Al-Hassan. I'm going with Joe Pyfer. There's no like super great technical breakdown here. Don't get me wrong. This is gonna be a fun fight. Like this is one of those cases where like analytically this fight is not interesting, but like in reality, it's a pretty fun fight. It's a pretty fun fight. Like it's two guys who are gonna go out there. They're heavy-handed. They're gonna swing leather. They're gonna swing the hammers, and at some point, one of them is gonna go down. And I think that's gonna be Razak Al-Hassan. He's the shorter guy. He's always been a little bit undersized for 185. Like he's more of a 170er. And Pyfer is big. Pyfer is like really big. Like dude looks incredibly thick. He's 6'2". Like he looks like a 205er. And he's fighting at 185. He's big boy. So, and obviously the UFC wants him to win because, they want you to be like Joe Pyfer. I feel good about like Dana White being a huge fan of Joe Pyfer. Like it's cool. It's fun because like the guy has had a rough life and, it's definitely worth it to see him succeed. I want to see it. But at the same time, like the same statement, I don't fully get why Dana White loves him so much. But I'm happy. If somebody is going to get Dana White privilege in the UFC, let it be Joe Pyfer. So I got Joe Pyfer winning. Betting odds. Yeah, they got Pyfer is about the same favorite that Grant Dawson is, which I feel like both of those are too far apart. -400 to -500 on Pyfer. You can get Razak Al-Hassan for as much as +360 and down to about +300. So yeah, I mean it's a bettable line. It's a bettable line. I could easily see like Pyfer's a guy who has never fought a guy with the punching power that we're talking about in the form of Razak Al-Hassan. Very, very few people have. Like that's not even me digging at Joe Pyfer. That's just a statement. Like Joe Pyfer's opponents in the UFC are Alan Amadovsky, Gerald Mershart, and then before that, your biggest hitter is... I got nothing. Like that. So it's a bit much. Like Gerald Mearshart is a better fighter than Razak Al-Hassan, but like it's a very, very, very different kind of fight. And then we got Alex Morono versus Joaquin Buckley. This one is interesting. This one is fun. Morono is the kind of guy who makes everything work because he's very, very smart. Like he has to be. He's the guy with no physical attributes of any note. Like he's I guess reasonably tall for welterweight, but like that's about it. Like he's not fast, he's not particularly strong, not particularly powerful, not explosive, just not athletic in any way. He's got good cardio and he's reasonably tough, but that's about it. And he's not even like iron jawed. He's been knocked out, and he's gonna find the absolute best game plan possible and try to make things happen. And then with Buckley, he's by contrast a very dumb fighter. Now, to be clear, I actually think Buckley's a fairly smart fighter. Like on the scale of like athletic fighters and like learning and trying to do more things, Buckley ranks pretty high. Like he tries to do new things. He tries to understand things. He tries to game plan. That's appreciated. He's not like a lot of guys who have his physical upside who are just like one size fits all. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to fight Gerald Mearshart the same as I was going to fight Joe Pyfer, the same as I was going to fight Alex Morono, the same as I was going to fight Bill Algeo. I'm just using names from this card. Whereas like Buckley has some like fine tuning, some ideas. So he's not a dumb fighter, but he's like in comparison, like dumb. Morono it makes almost anyone look dumb because Morono won't beat anybody that thinks on the same level as him. I do have to take Buckley. He's a strong wrestler, strong anti-wrestler, strong striker. He's predictable. He's got patterns that Morono, I think for sure will make him pay with counters at some point in the fight. But like I did say, Morono is not a complete fire hydrant head. He's knockoutable. And speaking of fire, the next fight you can probably pick by the fire hydrant head moment. But yeah, it's hard to see. It wouldn't be the biggest upset of Morono's career. He's beaten better fighters than this, but like I don't think that there's a reliable way that he wins this fight. He'll have his moments. He'll sting Buckley on the counter, like I said. He'll find some gaps and some predictability in Buckley's game because it is very much there. But Buckley is just too much of an athlete and relatively well put together. At 170, I think Buckley is like a legit nightmare. Like I kept saying, like the problem for him at 185 was just too goddamn short and not particularly good at like at fighting at range. At welterweight, he's facing guys who like he's got a reach advantage on Morono. He's an inch shorter, but he's got 4 inches of reach. He's got a 76-inch reach. At welterweight, that plays very, very well. Betting odds, I'm imagining Buckley is the big favorite here. Probably should be. I mean, with the wide lines on the other two fights, I would think that this is going to be something huge. No. Interesting. Okay. He's only minus 161 to minus 184. That's bettable. That's a bettable favorite line. And Morono, I was going to say Morono would probably be my bet, but like at plus 135 to 145, I'd stay away from it. It's not wide enough. If I'm going to bet on that one, it's Buckley. Drew Dober versus Ricky Glenn. Speaking of fire hydrant heads, Drew Dober. I really, really like Ricky Glenn. Like he's a guy like Alex Morono who makes the most of very limited physical gifts. In his case, he's a big guy for the weight class, at least where he was mostly fighting at 145. This is a 155 fight. But even at 155, 6 feet tall is, it's still big. He pushes a large pace. He is very, very, very busy, very tough, very aggressive, very down. But like at the same time, just got nuked by Christos Giagos. It's not a good sign. We might be kind of at that end of the road. I thought that before about Ricky Glenn and then been wrong. But like at the same time, you got nuked by a guy like Christos Giagos. You're fighting Drew Dober. Drew Dober is a hard hitter and a pretty good striker, actually. A guy who, once he finally learned to sit down on strikes, became actually really, really lethal. He is a good counter wrestler as well. Like he's not the wrestler everyone kind of like. For a long time, there was a joke with Drew Dober. It's like, he's from Nebraska. Look at that jawline. How did this man not go into wrestling? Like that's That's the great question. Like, just geographically where he was and what he looks like. It's kind of weird that he became like this. Initially, when he came in, like just kind of like this volume kickboxer. It's just very, very weird. But yeah, he's gonna find Glenn's chin. Glenn's chin is there to be hit. He's gonna be connect hard and probably get the knockout. Like, don't get me wrong, Dober's had some struggles in recent times. It does look like he's kind of like, nearing the end of his line. They're both 34 years old. That makes sense. But Glenn is falling from a lower place on the ladder than Dober is. And I also think falling a little bit quicker than Dober is. So there you go. Dober by TKO or knockout. He is a prohibitive favorite, minus 425 to minus 500 by the looks of it. And then on the other end of the spectrum, Ricky Glenn is plus 325 to plus 360. Again, a little bit too wide apart to be betting on Dober. And I don't really, I know what a Glenn win looks like because I know what a Glenn win looks like against just about anybody. But yeah, I can't really see it here. Felipe Lin's Ion Cutelaba 205 match. There are 3 ways this fight goes. And I'll be honestly stunned if it's not one of these. Cutelaba comes out and melts him because he does that. He crushes people. He's incredibly aggressive, throws everything into it at the expense of the long-term ability of him to fight. And he's a physical freak. So he comes out there and he just runs over Felipe Lins. That's option 1. Option 2, he comes out, he tries to run over Felipe Lins, and Lins sends him to the Shadow Realm because Cutelaba has been finished a number of times. Now, granted, Felipe Lins would be by far the least dynamic fighter to have done it. And that's why I'm not picking that one. I am picking option 3. Cutelaba comes out, tries to run over Felipe Lins. Lins just doesn't get run over. Like, he loses early, but he's tough enough and technical enough to come back and win a decision. That's what I'm picking. Because Lins is not really a huge finisher or whatever, but he is exceptionally tough. He would be like the toughest guy that Cutelaba just runs over. I want to say that, like, there's no one even particularly close on Ion Cutelaba's record here. By the way, they moved the Algeo fight up a spot. So I should be talking about Algeo Hernandez. But, like, you look at Cutelaba's thing, and it's like, yeah, you successfully ran over, like, Tanner Boser. That's cool. That's awesome. You ran over Gazimirad Antigulov. You ran over Khalil Roundtree during his, like, formative phases. That's about it. He did go, like, the distance to beat Devin Clark, so, like, it could look like his fight with Devin Clark and he wins the decision. But I don't think so. Because I think the problems that Felipe Lins has are just not the Devin Clark problems. Devin Clark has got, like, exceptional problems with his game. And that's why I got to take Lins by decision. It wouldn't surprise me if Cutelaba won this fight. It would probably be better if he did, because, like, Felipe Lins, late 30s, 38 years old, I think. Not a guy who's going to be making a lot of noise, like, going forward. And Cutelaba still could. Like, he's still young. If he could put himself together, there's nothing stopping him from being a good fighter but his own brain. And he's the favorite, minus 145 to minus 160. Lins is plus 120 to 130. I'd bet on Lins on that one. I would never bet on Cutelaba as a favorite. Like, that's just, you could give me Cutelaba against someone I was absolutely sure he would crush. Like, absolutely. And you give me but you put him at favorite odds, I'm not betting on it. So I'm not touching that one. I'm not generally touching that one, but if I did, it'd be on Felipe Lins. Then you have Bill Algeo versus Alex Hernandez. Alex Hernandez back at 145. I've said this before, and, like, this honestly, going forward, this is going to be my speech about Alex Hernandez. He has everything to be a good fighter. He has the physicality. 145 probably is a better home for him than 155. But he is clearly not understanding the problem. Like, in no way, like, because his response to losing a couple of fights at 155, where he became predictable and counterable and just kind of ran out, like, giving the same look over and over and over and over and over and over and over again will get you losses as the athletic ability of your opponents and the technical ability of them goes up. That's all that is. And he took that as, I got to cut weight. I got to go down in weight. I got to go down to 145. It's the wrong lesson, because that's in no way what should have been taken from that. In no way should that have been the solution that anybody came up with. And yet, here we are. I don't really know what to say else other than that. This is going to look a lot like the Billy Quarantillo fight with Alex Hernandez, where Hernandez comes out and he does good early. He does. But then his opponent, who's a very smart guy, technical guy, Algio's a little bit dumb on some things. He's got some conspiracy theory stuff going on. But like, as a fighter, very, very smart. And he's going to find the patterns. He's going to weaponize his pace. He's going to weaponize his productivity and his work rate. And he's going to probably just TKO Alex Hernandez because his game just breaks down. And it doesn't seem like he's trying to fix that. Like, again, I don't think cutting down to 145 is a bad idea. I think, though, that he's looking at the 145 cut as a solution to a problem that it's not going to fix. He could still win this fight. He's a phenomenal athlete. He could blow Algio out of the water very, very early. But I'm picking Algio to win by TKO. Because Algio is a pretty violent finisher, to be honest. Betting odds wise, Algio is the favorite. Damn it! I was hoping to get Algio at underdog odds. Minus 125 to minus 136. So, slight favorite. And then with Hernandez, you have him at plus 105 to plus 110. So, not really a bettable line, honestly. But I don't know. Hernandez at underdog odds has some appeal, I guess. Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Diana Belbita. There is always a chance that 37-year-old Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who, to be clear, I thought was done years ago, is done and just loses, just deflates against Belbita. Just absolutely falls apart. But her last couple of fights, she seems to have pulled herself together and figured some things out and come to peace with the idea that she's not invincible and that she has to actually mind her P's and Q's on defense and actually fight like a smart fighter. And Belbita's not good. Belbita is very tall. She's a 5'7" strawweight. That's insane. 68-inch reach. She got 4 inches on height and reach here. But she's not very good at keeping range, I should say. She does end up in the clinch a lot. And Kowalkiewicz is a clinch monster. That was what led Kowalkiewicz to beat Rose Namajunas back in the day, is that she is a monstrously punishing clinch fighter. And Belbita ends up there all the time. She ends up in wrestling exchanges all the time. She's not very strong. She's at the wrong gym. She trains at a House of Champions, which is not terribly far from me. And it's a gym I talk a little bit of crap about because I think it tries to turn everybody into the same fighter. And that works perfectly fine if you have a fighter like, I don't know, Josh Hill. Kind of. Who is one of their fighters. Who's okay, we're going to turn you into this top grappler thing. And then with Belbita, it's you need to learn how to be a range kickboxer. Come up with a good jab, come up with a good low kick game, come up with a good, high kick would be nice. Because you could, probably plant 5'2" girls on their ass with a high kick. And none of that is there. So the things that she needs to systematically avoid, she ends up in all the time because that's her gym's thing. And if you're going to give Kowalkiewicz, constant clinch opportunities, she's going to beat you. It's going to be very, very hard. This is a woman who has given the best in the division a really, really hard time in the clinch. And Diana Belbita is not amongst the best in the division. She's not amongst the best athletes in the division. She's not amongst the best fighters in the division. She is tough, so I assume this goes the distance. Kowalkiewicz is not a reliable finisher. So Kowalkiewicz by decision. I imagine she's a prohibitive favorite. No. She's only minus 155 to minus 178. It's bettable. That's bettable. Belbita plus 130 to plus 138. Belbita will probably get some love from the Tate stands because she's a Tate stan. Which, is whatever. It's not why I'm not picking against her. Or why I'm picking against her. She's just not very good. Johnny Munoz Jr. or Richie Lang. God, this is a bad fight. I don't like this fight. Munoz is a top control grappler with no real takedown game and a jab. He's got a good jab. He's got a very good jab. Aoriqileng is just a mess. He's got bad defense. He's kind of just a bully, like powerful guy, hard hitter. That's probably enough. Aoriqileng by decision. I don't know. I'm not looking forward to this fight. It's bottom of the barrel action that of two guys that, to be honest, it doesn't feel like should be in the UFC, but like that's becoming increasingly like the thing on these lower cards. Like that's what bugs me. Aoriqileng is the slight favorite at minus 110 to minus 120, and Munoz is minus 105 to minus 110. So that is a just do not bet fight. Stay away from it. If you need a piss break, this is the fight. Kanako Murata versus Vanessa Demopoulos. I see both of these fighters as like exceptionally similar ladies. They both have like these grab bag submissions that they like to get that are not terribly reliable. And then on top of that, you have Murata, who's a very strong wrestler, Demopoulos, who's not a very strong wrestler, and they're both pretty clueless on the feet. I'm going to go with Murata just on the idea that like Demopoulos probably can't control her or get her down on any kind of realistic rate. She shouldn't be able to catch her with like her, arm bars and stuff like that she likes to throw up. I'm sure there will be some interesting grappling moments in this fight because both of these girls can't say no to an opportunity to try to go for a submission. But and to be honest, like Demopoulos is yet another one of these fighters that I really question why the UFC doesn't have an atomweight division, because she could probably make it. Like she's 5'2" and pretty petitely built. That's an atomweight build. She's very strong. She's got a personality. Like she's got a personality. People talk about her. People enjoy her. She's got an interesting backstory. Between her and like Michelle Waterson, Tisha Torres, Tabitha Ricci, like you have the makings of a legitimately good atomweight division, and you just don't do it. I don't get it. You have women's 145, which admittedly you ignore. Like, I don't get why the UFC doesn't have more divisions, just full stop. I've said this when they were trying to downsize the flyweight division in the men's rankings for the third time. I don't understand why, as a company that needs belts and needs ranked fighters as part of your TV deal, you aren't constructing more divisions to get more belts and more ranked fighters. I don't understand it. And like Michelle Waterson's represented by WME, like she is the company fighter. I have no idea why 105 never became a priority with the UFC. I don't get it. It would be pretty interesting. Anyways, Murata by decision. And betting odds. Murata is a very big favorite, which I guess I get because I really can't even really imagine what a Demopoulos win here looks like. Minus 325 to minus 390. And on Demopoulos, you can get about plus 260 to plus 290. Not bad. All right. We got two more fights to go, maybe? Yes. Nate Maness versus Mateusz Mendonca. So you'll remember when I was saying about Alex Hernandez going down to 145 and that just being a bad idea. Not necessarily because the weight cut was a bad idea, but because it was trying to solve a problem that wasn't going to be solved. Nate Maness is the same thing, and it's a bad idea because he's 5'10" at flyweight. The man is as tall as I am. I weigh over 200 pounds. I get it. I'm a fatty. I'm a big guy. I'm large. But my God, man, Corey Sandhagen kills himself getting down to 135. You're like Corey Sandhagen says, what are you thinking going down to 125? Why? I'm never going to pick him at 125. Never. I don't even think he has really the right style for it. I think he got out wrestled by like Usman or Magomedov and was like, I need to go down a weight class to fix this. No, you don't. Number one, you just need to learn to wrestle a little bit better. But number two, you got out wrestled by Usman or Magomedov. Or not Usman. Is it Usman? Umar. The 135 one in the UFC. There you go. The Nurmagomedovs are bleeding together for me. Yeah, you got out wrestled by a guy who's like really, really, really good and has a culture of wrestling, and then you went down to 125 and got out wrestled by Tadger Ulanbekov. Like, what? Why are you not back at 135? Why? And I like Nate Maness. He's a fun like action boxer. Like I like him. He's got some nifty submission attacks and dynamicism. Like I really like him. But at 125, no. I like Mendonca. He's got a good like power Muay Thai style. He's going down to 125 as well, which I think is also a similar thing. Like you got beat by Javid Basharat. Like it shouldn't provoke you going down to 125. You lost to somebody good. You lost to somebody good. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen at 125 too. But he's 5'6". Like I don't look at him and go like I didn't look at him instantly when I was looking at this fight and think, oh man, Mendonca is not a flyweight. Whereas with Maness, I did. Like I had to dig deep to remember that Mendonca was fighting at 135 most of his career. Like I had to go back and actually look at that. Whereas like Nate Maness, it's just like this is a stupid idea. I've got Mendonca by decision. Maness is really really tough. His Achilles heel being the wrestling and like dominance on the ground isn't really something Mendonca does. Don't get me wrong, Mendonca can wrestle, Mendonca can grapple. He's Brazilian, but like he is like that shoot a box build. Like he wants to go out there and like beat the crap out of you on the feet. He wants to turn you black and blue. And it's going to be probably going to be a fun fight, but I see Maness' like just body saying, no mas, man. Why are you doing this to me? And the opener, Montana De La Rosa, JJ. Oh, hang on. Betting odds. Betting odds. We need them betting odds in our lives. Not that I think that. Oh, there's only one betting line for this one. Plus 195 on Maness, minus 240 on Mendonca. Wouldn't touch it. Montana De La Rosa, JJ Aldridge. I think this has been like a fight I've called for like 2 or 3 times in my matchmaking for these girls. They're both like physically limited fighters. Like they're not spectacular athletes, but they've learned to live with that. They're well-rounded. They can do a little bit of everything. They're both predominantly better at striking than anything else. De La Rosa loves to box. Aldridge loves to box as well. That is what I would like fundamentally describe them as being, but they can wrestle, they can grapple, they can do a little bit of everything. I'm big fans. I love fighters that are trying to be the best version that they can be. And these two girls are doing that. It's unfortunate that that's not going to result in a title run for them or anything like that, or even like a title shot. But like it does mean that they're interesting tests for whoever they fight. And, people have obviously cracked that egg open. They've both lost to Macy Barber. Montana Del Rosa recently lost to Tatiana Suarez, and JJ Aldridge to Aaron Blanchfield. But those are like monsters. Those are physical beasts. Those are destroyers of worlds. Except for Barber. And it's going to be fun. Like I said, it's going to be primarily a boxing thing. I do think Montana Del Rosa's boxing is built wrong. I think she has some coaches that are trying to work this like kind of quick, swift, pardon me, I think I said swift, like kind of boxing game that relies on explosiveness and quickness and slickness. These are not really things that she actually has. Like, honestly, they're not. She needs to have a little bit more of a meat and potatoes game, kind of like Aldridge. Aldridge is actually really good at finding like counters, which I think is going to be a huge problem because De La Rosa is very, very counterable. Because again, she's not super fast. If you're not super fast and you're trying to be like slick, you're going to get countered a fair bit. And yeah. And I think in terms of wrestling, I think Aldridge has more than enough strength and so on to actually stay standing. Like she was hard for Aaron Blanchfield to take down, which like speaks very, very highly of her abilities to defend a takedown. And that's why I've got her by decision. I mean, I still have that damn loss to Ariane Lipsky stick in my brain. And it's one of those things that like with Ariane Lipsky, like she's recently seemingly found something like incredibly late in her career, but like the picture of her in my brain, I'm pointing at my noggin right now, my freshly shaved head, is that at the end of the day, I have this idea of this journeyman flawed fighter in my brain that maybe is not the Lipsky of now. So there's that. I've got Aldridge by decision. What are the betting odds? She's taking this on short notice, but she strikes me as somebody who is like always ready to go. Ooh, De La Rosa is a big, well, not a big favorite, but a bigger favorite than I was expecting. Minus 140 to minus 150. Might put some money on Aldridge. Aldridge is plus 114 to plus 125. Yeah, so bet GM, you might be getting some bets from me because I think Aldridge is gonna win. Thank you for listening to the Emilio MMA podcast today. And please check out the links down below and in the description here because I would love to see you over on the Discord, chat with you on Twitter, and just enjoy some like nerdy gaming stuff with you. Please check out the Fight Sim is, I guess, what I'm getting at.